Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America. Remember to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is devoted to our Meet the Nominees Movies for Television and Limited Series Symposium. The annual event is a roundtable discussion with the directors nominated for the Guild's Award for Outstanding Directorial Achievement in Movies for Television and Limited Series. On January 30th, David Leveaux and Alex Rudzinski, the director and live television director of Jesus Christ Superstar Live in Concert, Ben Stiller, the director of Escape at Dannemora, and Jean-Marc Vallee, the director of Sharp Objects, all gathered at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles to discuss the making of their films with moderator Mike Robe. Nominees Cary Joji Fukunaga, the director of Maniac, and Barry Levinson, the director of Paterno, were not available to participate. Please enjoy our Meet the Nominees Movies for Television and Limited Series special, and listen to the nominees discuss the unique challenges they faced while filming. Highlights include why David Leveaux cast John Legend as the titular star of Jesus Christ Superstar, Jean-Marc Vallee's approach to creating the eerie look of Sharp Objects, and Ben Stiller speaking about shooting in the actual prison at which Escape at Dannemora is set.
Well, while these extraordinary directors are getting suited up and ready, getting their game faces on, I want to thank the DGA, as always, for hosting this event. It's such a delight. I want to thank Betty Thomas for that amazingly adequate introduction. Greatly appreciated. I'll try to live up to it, by the way. This year is the first time that this DGA award for what we used to call long-form television, the name has changed. For over a half a century, it was called the Award for the Best Movie or Miniseries. Certainly, some of these projects would be called miniseries today, but now it's limited series, which reflects the new world order of television. And it's time we moved into it, and I'm glad we are. Because now, if it's streaming, if it can be put on any kind of instrument anywhere, Netflix will make a show out of it, and we officially come into the new era. So let's get right into it tonight because we have a limited amount of time. Let's begin with this. If there's a commonality among the three shows that each of you represent, other than the excellence, it occurs that each one of these films that you bring to us this year are they seem at first glance like they could be they could be thought of as genre pieces. Escape at Dannemora is the prison breakout film. Sharp Objects, the Southern Gothic murder mystery. Even Jesus Christ Superstar is another Broadway musical that we're doing for live television. And yet each of your films transcends the label of genre so remarkably. Ben, I want to start with you.
Oh, okay.
Just your life. How did Escape at Dannemora come into your life? You can perhaps touch on that. And was there a point when you asked yourself, how, for the love of God, can I make this different from Escape from Alcatraz?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why it came to me. I was sent a couple of scripts by the writers and the producer Brian Zurif, and I don't know what the process was that they thought I would be the right guy to direct this because I hadn't really done anything like that before. But for me, as a director and a fan of that kind of drama, I was really excited to get it because it's for me, it's the kind of thing I grew up watching and that a genre I loved as an audience. And the challenge was for myself was why should I do this? As an audience, I know why I'd watch it, but why should I direct it? And I knew I had the desire to direct it because I thought the story was so fascinating and so interesting, and the reality of what happened to me was what drew me into it. At first, they sent me these scripts that they had fictionalized because they didn't really have that much information about what had really happened, and I passed on it because I didn't know enough about what happened. I felt that was my way in. How something like these guys could saw through their cells in 2015 in this old style prison break. How does that happen nowadays? So when this Inspector General report came out a few months after I'd passed on it, that was a 160-page sort of Bible of what had happened and had all these great details. That was for me the key into it. And I called them up. I said, if you still need a director, why don't we start from scratch with this and go for everything that's in here and try to tell the story in as real a way as possible. And that's, for me, what I thought could maybe make it a little bit different. And also the fact that Tilly, Patricia Arquette's character, was such a huge part of the story, and how these men manipulated this woman and really took her down this road of promising her a life that she sort of dreamed of, and she bought and went for. And I just thought it transcended what a typical prison story might be because of that element.
And Sharp Objects, Jean-Marc. Were you offered when you were offered the film? Did you immediately contemplate, how do I make this different? Was it instant? Or is that maybe something that a director throughout the process is asking themselves, how do I do this in a fresh way?
Yeah, I mean, with the crew, with the DP, and there was a film noir aspect to it that we wanted to revisit in some ways with color, though, not with black and white. But it was an invitation from Amy Adams. That was her first. She got the book, and it was going to be her first TV series, and I was working at back then on something else with her that didn't work out, and she sent the book, and I read it, and I went, wow. You want to play this character? And I was in more to see Amy Adams doing her thing and her magic with Camille Preaker than the whole thing. Although the book is a page turner, it's amazing. It's so well written.
Book by Gillian Flynn, who was also an executive producer.
Yes, and it's so special. It's a ride that I've never read something like this. I've never read a character like Camille Preaker. I've never met someone like this in life. And Gillian has a mind of its own, and she can go dark, and it's hurting, it's heartbreaking. The relationship and the history of abuse between these women and this family is cruel and heartbreaking, and yet you see that they're fighting and they're trying to love each other. There's a beautiful family story behind that murder mystery, and Amy got it, and I went, yeah, all right, I'm in. Let's do this, and that's it.
And you were just coming off Big Little Lies, right? Did you have any rest?
No, that's why I look like I look, and that's why I'm on a break right now. I was posting Big Little Lies. We weren't done, and we were starting to prep Sharp Objects, and yeah, that was a tough.
So they said, we've wounded him. Let's finish him off now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a matter of circumstances, and the two projects became, like this, and I love the two projects, and although it's a marathon, and Ben did it also, directing for, I think his was 118 days of shooting nonstop. I mean, it's a marathon.
How many were your two back to back?
Sharp was 92, BLL was 90. So in almost 2 years, in 20 months, we shot 182 days.
5 day weeks?
5 day a week, but although we shot 9 to 6. So that's at least we can. I was waking up around 7:30 and then going to work, arriving at 8:45, and doing the day until 6. Sometimes 6:30, 7, and if we have to start later during the afternoon, we finish later at night. But at least we could have a decent we could recharge the batteries as we were doing this marathon. And but it's great. I enjoyed it. I mean, I want to go back to the feature, the 40 day of shooting next. But I really loved it. It's thrilling, it's exciting, and you get creative on the day, and you do it every day. And then I was thinking of those directors from the 40s, like Michael Curtis, and directing 52 films in their careers, and just going to work every day every year for the studios, and working probably 150 days, 100 to 150 days a year shooting. And the crew and I, since from BLL to Sharp Objects, were using pretty much the same crew, and so we were thinking, this is what they were going through back then, and this was the norm, for a director to be hired and direct and be on the set, and it's a learning, really a great learning experience.
Well, David and Alex, the dynamic duo, and I want you to talk, first of all, I do want you to talk a little bit about, because for some of these folks may not quite understand who does what when it comes to directed by, and what is the credit? Live television
Live
directed
television
by?
directing,
yeah. But let's start with David. How did it's not like in one sense, Jesus Christ Superstar is unique, but it's not like television hasn't been through a spate of live musical adaptations. Did you think about that? Did you see, and they have been largely successful, did you think, was that intimidating to you? Was it inspiring or irrelevant?
That was relevant. I mean, in the sense that, I think my first reaction when they asked me to do it was, apart from, the fact that I've always loved that piece ever since I saw it as a teenager. It's one of those pieces that sticks in your mind. But I think in the first sort of hour or so after they called me, my ambition probably didn't extend beyond thinking how I could avoid, getting crucified before Jesus, because the vicissitudes of, doing live musicals live on TV, when everybody, of course, has an opinion. And the thought, okay, we're going to be there for 2 hours while the Twitter sphere explodes. And in fact, I think I invented the word. I probably didn't, actually, when I thought the word Twitter fiction, which was my alternative to the crucifixion, that I thought, this could be something. But then, of course, at the end of the day, everything worthwhile can be a disaster. So I put that aside very quickly, and just thought, what an interesting challenge to find a way, to send the extraordinary youthful voltage of this piece that Andrew and Tim made when they were in their very early 20s, through TV screens across the land, and make it work for people of faith and not of faith, which was a key, and to try to give it a sense of what I'd felt when I first saw it, which was awe. And so that's where it started for me. And, of course I had to say yes. But luckily, Alex, I knew was going to be alongside with me. And Alex was a veteran of the broadcast musical. And so I knew that would be an exciting relationship.
Well, and indeed, for those, if you're not familiar, because Alex was here last year for, was it Grease? Was it last year?
Was it Grease or Hairspray? I can't remember.
Well, Alex has been the the television director for Grease, Hairspray, which leads me to ask, why weren't you asking yourself, really, am I up for this again?
I must be doing something wrong or right. I think every work that we undertake and every production we look at to bring it to the screen brings its own challenges, and you're always trying to reinvent yourself, and you're always trying to look at the work in the book and try and figure out a fresh take on broadcasting that work, and you try and in conjunction. So for those that are unaware of the kind of duopoly, the relationship between the two of us, there's like a stage director and a live television director which is me, and David very much works with the cast and the chemistry between the cast and developing the book and the narrative of the story, we work in conjunction in terms of blocking scenes and figuring out how the cinematography will work, and then I will develop that and create and storyboard basically the entire show, and then execute that with the technical teams and call it on the night. So it starts off slightly more weighted to the stage director's work, and then it ends up on the night a little more weighted in my world. But in order to succeed, very much we need to be joined at the hip, and we need to understand perfectly each other's vision and support each other, and really try and be on a tangential but parallel course, whereby we support each other all the way through the process. But yes, it's very humbling being in your company, and because we're all bringing movies and narrative and story to the screen in a slightly different context. But ultimately, it's just having the canvas to be able to tell those stories in an intriguing and different and visceral way, and that's what we try and all motivate ourselves towards doing.
Well, in this evening, for those of you who might be here for the first time, we traditionally, when we talk with directors about the outstanding work that they've done and why they're on this stage, we break the director's role into the three periods of making a movie: prep, production, and then post-production. So let's do that. Let's get into the idea of prepping the films, or that you did. And Jean-Marc, I'm thinking, here you are. I want to talk about casting a little bit, because all of the casting in all of these films is terrific. But here you have Amy Adams, you have Patricia Clarkson, you have Eliza Scanlon, who played the young half-sister of Camille, Amy Adams, in the clip. But let's take Amy, because Amy was instrumental at the very beginning. How do you begin with an actor like Amy? I mean, do you have this? I'm curious. Did you have this mating dance of the first lunch that you get together, or did you know her before, or when did she come into the project? Did she recruit you? Did you cast her? How did that start, and how do you deal with the star relationship at the beginning?
Well, as I said earlier, it was an invitation from her, and that I accepted, and I was honored, and I wanted. I felt, I felt grateful and thankful, and I wanted to serve not only the project but serve Amy, and try to be there for her to portray that special, pretty unique character. So she's, being Amy, being who she is, we didn't have a lot of prep, and we had a very specific schedule because of some contingencies, some limitations from Amy and from other actors. So and it's a matter of we had a lunch or two, and it's a matter of trust. And I do my homework, she does her homework, so as the other actors, and it happened, and then it happens on the day when we start shooting, and we started to meet in the morning in her trailer to talk about the day, and sometimes about the week, but mainly about the day, about where her character is, where she was, about the continuity, and about the sense of the scenes and the sense of what we're about to do today, and since we're not always shooting in continuity, so she wanted to have this moment in the morning to talk, and she's very, cerebral, and she's very bright, She's very intelligent. She has a way of talking about understanding the intentions, and I was in awe every morning, and I was more listening than talking, and then as soon as we were going on the set and she was ready and we were shooting, bang, it becomes instinct, and it's happening. And it's like she, and she doesn't talk anymore about it. It's just happening. And because...
Did you have a traditional rehearsal period with your cast, however short, or?
No. We unless it has to be technical, but we didn't. I've been doing this for years, where we just trust the process, and we as I said, we meet in prep if we need to talk about certain scenes and characters and the arc and some intentions and what kind of emotion and tone of the film and this and that. But then the way we shoot, available light, and this project, it was okay to do it again. Since Café de Flore, we've been working with this approach where we shoot available light, handheld, asking the crew to get out of the set, and we try to shoot 360 degrees. We don't cut between shots. We shoot, and then we get creative, and it becomes there's something. It creates some space of freedom, for the actors and the crew, and for myself. And I react to. Mainly, I start with Amy, and I ask her, "Would you like, to start?" We start on you, and I like to start on her, since we designed the shots based on her POV, based on her perspective, mainly. So once she starts, and she can use the space, and they arrive on the set, just use the space. I'm starting here with a 35 mil, and therefore she can use the space, and then we react, and we rarely change the lens. Try to keep the distance between the characters and put the camera behind them, and then if they come closer, then we come closer. And so we react to what they're doing, and mainly to what Amy is doing. When she moves, we move, or we move with her, or we pan. Pay very attention to where she's looking at, so I can shoot what she's looking at. And then we give also this privilege to some other characters, like Eliza and like Patricia's character, Clarkson, who played Adara, the mother, and then it becomes the decisions are taken then in the cutting room. But,
right, yeah. You give yourself lots of
I wouldn't
material.
I wouldn't say a lot, because mainly it's about the main character, but sometimes we get out of this theory, and we if needed be, and often we need to break it. And,
Well, let me switch over to David a second. Because you had in the category of star casting, you had a very large celebrated performer in the leading role, John Legend. Now, I'm curious. Did John? He was an executive producer. Did he come into the project before you, or did you have any role in casting him?
No, he wasn't in the project when I came on. Nobody was on it. Nobody was cast, and there was a period of obviously some weeks, when we were thinking, well, who's going to be Jesus, and there were a whole range of issues about that for me, which were, not least the fact that it had to have, it's 2018, and there had to be something kind of I wasn't thinking of, somebody playing a hippie out there, and so there were all sort of, and then when the idea of John came up, I thought that's really interesting. I didn't know him. John reacted very fast to the idea, actually, which surprised me, because I thought he might be, wary of putting himself into a situation, particularly, a live situation like that. Plus, at the time, I was pushing very hard for every element of the show to be live, because not all of these musicals are necessarily like, often the soundtrack, the music is is recorded, so things are more controlled. And I was going in the opposite direction. I think, NBC was sort of secretly hoping I might have a kind of small band of 5, and then we ended up with 32. And they were all live. And so the whole question of whether John would sort of really want to jump into that. But when he did jump in, I was very impressed by the fact that he didn't come, overly defended in the sense that he could have done. I didn't feel like he was trying to preserve himself, other than the good sense to preserve yourself, as a singer and your voice and that whole thing. And I just admired him very much. But I think one of the things I just felt very strongly at the outset that I needed to say to John was that, for him not to worry about trying to turn himself into an actor. And I'm putting that in inverted commas because, of course, he's an actor, he's out there acting, but I didn't want him to be burdened by trying to be something other than himself. And there was a key to this, which is that, it's called Jesus Christ Superstar. And what I was trying to express to John was, I know this feels uncomfortable, but as close as we can get to you in your own skin doing this, the better this is going to work. It's going to be truer. You'll be more relaxed. It'll be, and the day it happened, was, this really specific thing happened when I suddenly saw the light go on in his eye, and I thought, oh, this is so great because you can be here now, which is all I wanted him to, to feel that he could be. We had a set that involved a mosh pit and a live audience and all that. It was basically a kind of L-shaped. We picked up a piece of, my thought with this with our production designer Jason was let's smash up the Sistine Chapel and bring a few fragments and stick it into the Brooklyn Armory and play this thing in this world with a live audience. And one edge of this space is 144 feet of stage. That's so there's an audience down that side, and then there was always like an L shape. And John, his first entrance was sort of way up, and I just said to him, I tell you what, actually, in the middle of this moment with Judas, and you've just come on, what about, why don't we do a 144-foot hello? And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, what if you walked all the way down that 144 foot and just touched as many hands as you possibly can on your way in, because it's Jesus Christ Superstar. And he went, okay. And the first time he did it in our rehearsal room, and there was like 4 of us there, me, sort of couple of whatever, and we all just. But it was that moment when I just saw it in him, and I thought, oh, okay, you can be here now. You don't feel like you've got to play somebody else's Jesus or whatever. You're relaxed about the fact that you're John Legend, and that's going to be the wit of the event, And I just admired him so much for doing that. And I'll say this finally. There are some people you're just pleased to see, and the thing I found about John was he's one of those people who just carries with him a fundamental decency. Mm-hmm. And you can't fake it. And that decency is something that, is so kind of luminous. It's just a quality. You can't mess with that. And I didn't want him to sort of get angry where he didn't have to be angry. I didn't want it to get into a kind of duo thing with Judas where we were just playing anger or hate, because his complexity just came out of him being this very, very kind of decent, watchful man, and it was very exciting to do that.
Well, and I think a brilliant approach on your part, dealing with a leading actor who is not really, to my knowledge, not trained as an actor.
No, it's not his first thing.
I think that's, and it paid off on screen. Ben, let's talk about your casting for a second. The 3 principals, absolutely terrific. Benicio del Toro, Paul, just stark, ravingly brilliant. But I have to say that for me, and I have a feeling for others, at the top of the list is Patricia Arquette as Tilly. she was just mesmerizing. I mean, and she's got this. You play this frumpy, whiny, sexually manipulative woman. How did her casting come about? I'm sure you cast her. Did you see that in her from the get-go, or were you surprised?
Oh, well, I don't see her that way as a person.
And why not?
You know, she's a brilliant actress, and I think that's not a secret. And it just, from the very beginning, seemed to me that she could have the bravery to disappear into this role. And I never doubted for a second that she would do what she needed to do to play the part. And so she was there from the very beginning. She stayed with the project as we were trying to put the project together, trying to find a home for it, trying to get it set up. For about a year, she was with it, just stayed with it when it wasn't actually a real thing. And I had known her. We'd done a movie 20-something years ago with David O. Russell, Flirting with Disaster, and we had played a couple in that. And I remember having such a great experience with her, and her doing things in that film that were just so quirky and real, and without vanity in any way, in playing a real person. She just plays a real person. And you talk about a decency, that's there. And I feel Patricia has, as a person, she's a very, very special person. She's a very generous person. And she brought that, ironically, to this character, which really is not a very, I think, as evolved human being as Patricia is. Yeah. And she was willing to go into it. And it was not easy for her. I mean, she gained a bunch of weight, and she had to live in that skin for a long time. It was a long shoot. And she had this process where she would come into it very much, I think, without it was her instinct in the scene. She would come into it with her instinct, and usually her instinct was just it was right. And she gave everybody around her who she was working with the feeling that they could be a part of her process. But I felt as a director that I was just sort of, the same way with Amy, in the presence of an actor who's so instinctively good that you're just trying to sort of witness what they're doing, and sometimes give a little direction to, like, maybe go this way or go that way. If there was something that I saw that I thought, there was something to be explored, I would suggest it, and we would have discussions about it. But, she really trusted that everybody was doing their job, and that she could just go and take the chances she needed to take. And I think that trust that she puts in the director, in the other actors, in the crew, because she really she knows everything that's going on, and she would be aware if, like if she felt like the sound man, maybe like she would go like, was the boom in the shot on that one? I don't know. It might have, or if there was like sound happening off camera that on somebody else's side of the scene when they were doing it, she would, be very quick to tell people to be quiet and respect what the actor was doing. She, she looks out for people because she's such a good person, and she knows the process so well. And it was just, for her, she had to just dive in. And I think there were some very, very, very hard scenes for her to do.
Well, one of the things I admired most about Dannemora was and it has to do with her performance, but it also has to do with your approach to this material. And it was this what seemed to me to be this almost fanatical commitment to realism. Whenever to what actually happened, whenever there was a choice to be made, I could think of several choices in some moments when you could have done something. You could do the dramatic thing, or you could look to the situation and look at what actually happened. And she seemed to embrace that, but so did you as a director. Was that a part of your creed for cast and crew? Let's look at what actually happened instead of making a movie to put it badly.
Yeah, yes, in that for me that was always the touchstone of like, let's go and find out what really happened, and that's usually going to be the most interesting thing. But then there's that part of the process when you're developing the story where, at least for us, where we delved into the real events and the real details, and then you have that, and then you look at the script and you go, okay, I've got this script full of real events and real details, but it's not that dramatic or necessarily interesting. And so then you have to kind of let it go and find the story, the core of what the story is, and have the freedom to go away from that, and which we did. And then as we came back to filming it, then I would come back to the reality with the technical advisors we had on set. So we always had somebody from the prison there in terms of just telling us how something would actually happen in that room and what the procedure would be. Or there was just the actor inspiration that sometimes didn't have to do with what really happened. With Benicio, he would have, all of these really, really kind of crazy and interesting ideas that came out of his own thought process for what Richard Matt was going through. But Richard Matt was not alive, so he really, there was not much to go on in terms of what was going on in his head. So Benicio created that based on the research he did. But sometimes that totally went off of reality. But I would always be there with like, well, this is actually what really happened. And then you kind of go with whatever the best idea is. And sometimes you try both things. For Patricia, I think she was just constantly trying to go to the emotional sort of reality of this person, the emotional life of Tilly, and not judging her. And that was a big thing, to not judge her and not to say she's a bad person or a good person. She's just a person in this situation. And that was, that exploration always resulted in something that was really, really interesting.
And I want to talk about the prison, but I do want to talk about locations, because it seems like in prep, that's the other half of the time you spend, long moments in a van looking for the places to shoot your movie. How do you, Jean-Marc, how do you pick locations? How do you, how many did you have in your movie? I mean, it seems like, how many different places did you shoot? Did you find it all in one small town, or? No.
We had to shoot in LA, and we didn't find this. The main location was a Victorian house, the house of the Preaker, Camille Preaker, her mother, and we were looking for it. John Pano, production designer, with his team. We're looking for it, and we looked in LA and in Georgia, and then suddenly, pure coincidence, somebody sent us a picture from Norton, California, above San Francisco, and there was this exterior Victorian house in the middle of nowhere, and it could feel like Georgia. It was green, it was green here and there. It was like desert-like, a little bit California also, but we could make it work, and so that was the exterior. And then we were trying to find an interior that could match, and we didn't. So we went, let's build the interior, and so we built the house. We shot all of the interior. So that was a main location where we shot a lot on stage here in LA. We went 2 weeks in Norton, California, and about 3 weeks in Georgia to shoot in a small town next to Atlanta, 2 hours from Atlanta, called Barnesville. So Barnesville became Wind Gap. And
that was your Wind Gap, Missouri.
Wind Gap, Missouri, exactly. And
so when you built the sets, you had a chance to really explore Edora's character, because it seemed like a great reflection of this obsessive need for perfection on her part.
Perfection, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's, that's her jail too,
Yes.
And they became so precise and so anal in some ways, and it's crazy, It's so John and his team, and the good thing is we could create our own interior, and we saw a house on pictures that we loved, the staircase, and we had this idea of having Camille's room in a way where she couldn't get right away in her room, but she had to walk all around the other doors and go in front of her mother's place in order to go in her room. And so we created that based on her house and not based on the one in California, because the interior in California wasn't good, but the exterior was amazing. So, and the thing we did that was great too, we built the porch on stage so we could shoot, and we had a translight all over the house, almost 360 degrees. It was like 42 feet high. So that was a picture of the surroundings in Northern California. So we were shooting again with a 35, a very high aperture at 1.4, 1.6. And that's where the focus puller is like nervous because there's no depth of field. And he's like breathing next to me, and he... but in order not to see that it's a translight, it has to be out of focus. But we shot a lot of exterior inside on stage where, and we shoot available light, except there, Yves Bélanger, the cinematographer, the DP, was happy to finally have his toys. I was on a rack that could come, the sun could come down, it could be cloudy, it could be bright sunny, it could be less. And I said, why don't you go from cloudy to sunny? So it changes. And then his gaffer built something. So in the same shot, we could go, it's sunny, and then it becomes cloudy. Which is tricky to do on stage, but it's got to be quick, and they move a little bit of stuff. But
while we're on the subject, and I'll work my way back over to the Armory, but while we're on the subject of locations, I want to ask Ben about the prison, because I don't know how many of you directors out there have shot in a working prison. It can be a nightmare. There's some problems of movement and security and untold problems. So I want to ask you, the prison is a major set piece in your film. Talk a little bit about how you put together the prison.
Yes. Well, so it's a real place, and it's a very unique geographical situation where the prison is in the middle of the Adirondacks, sort of dominating this small town. And it was basically, we needed to get the real prison to shoot, at least to shoot the outside of, because it was impossible to really recreate that unless we were going to do visual effects where we would place the prison in the mountains. We were 6 weeks before shooting. I'm not kidding you. We had no location to shoot. We were not getting help from the New York State Department of Corrections because they weren't excited about advertising the prison break. And we tried for about a year, just getting nothing back from them. And we found a prison to shoot inside the walls, exteriors within the walls of the prison in Pittsburgh, this place called Western State Penitentiary that had just been decommissioned. But for the actual outside of the prison and the yard, the north yard of the prison, which is on the side of the mountain, which is this very unique geographical setup that looks out over the mountains where the prisoners have their own courts, it was just impossible to recreate. And we had no set, we had no location, and we tried through all the channels. So finally, about 6 weeks out, I knew a guy. I had done a promotional video for the mayor of New York, and the guy who had done the video, I called him up. I said, do you know anybody in the governor's office who maybe I could call, because the Department of Corrections is stonewalling us? And he said, I know somebody, let me get back to you. The next day, he sent me an email for the governor's chief of staff, and I wrote her an email. And basically, she emailed me back about a week later, and this was like it's 5 weeks out. And she said, well, how can we help you? And I explained our situation. And the next day, we got a conference call with the Department of Corrections. Somebody in the governor's office had talked to them, and they finally listened to our request. And we said, we'd like to open up the manhole, shoot outside of the prison walls, at least, just for us. And they granted our request. And then a few days later, I got a call from the chief of staff saying the governor would like to talk to you. And I was both excited and a little petrified because I didn't know what's this going to be the quid pro quo where it's like, okay, you can shoot there, but you got to, tell the story the way you want to. And basically, he wanted to sit down and talk about what we were doing. He was really excited about the idea of the story. He had actually gone into the prison the day that they escaped and shot video, which we used as reference. And at the end of this talk, where I told him who was playing Tilly and all this stuff, and he was just kind of fascinated by it. Then he said, "Well, what can we do for you?" And I knew that we didn't have access to the North Yard where we wanted to shoot these scenes. And I thought of the 200 people back at the production office who had no location. And here's the governor saying, "What can I do for you?" And I was like, "Well, can we shoot in the prison?" And he's like, "You got to shoot in the prison." And I just had this moment of thinking of all these people there who were going to be so happy. And so he granted us access to the prison. And then that opened up the floodgates for us, really, because then we went in and visited and asked the people who work there if they would help us. And they were very resistant at first, obviously, because they didn't want this story to embarrass them. And but then we developed a relationship with them, and we were able to have technical advisors from the prison, in addition to prisoners who were technical advisors, and we could shoot in the prison. And we were able to shoot for 2 days on the North Yard, but 1 day in the winter and 1 day in the summer, which was just probably for me the most exciting time of the whole shoot. And then open up the manhole that they escaped out of, and actually have the actors come out of the manhole and shoot the actors going in and out of the gates of the prison, Patricia and Eric Lang, who played Lyle. So we would be waiting during shift changes while the workers of the prison were going in and out, and then have our actors go in and out. So we had a real interaction with the people in the town. We ended up shooting up in the town for 2 months. And then for another 2 weeks, in 2 months in the summer for the escape, we shot backwards because we had to start the summer. So we did the escape first, and then for another 2 weeks in the wintertime. And the people in the town, there were about 1,000 people who came out and auditioned to be a part of it. And they ended up being a really, really important part of the cast. And I think it made the story a lot fuller and a lot more real because they opened up to us.
And we were talking before. I was just stunning how you were able to achieve fall and winter, and I thought you must have used some trickery. But you just shot that long. You were there for 2 seasons.
Yes, exactly.
You were forever shooting this.
Yeah, Showtime was surprised as well. We started in the end of August and shot September, and we actually caught the end of summer because we just at the very end, the leaves were turning, because the leaves turn really early up there, and we shot up there for as long as we could. Then we moved south to outside of New York City and shot outside there, and then we moved into the prison set, which we shot in for a couple of months, and went down to Pittsburgh for a few weeks, and that took us through October, November, December, and parts of January, and then we went back up to Dannemora and shot the winter stuff for the very first episodes last. So the very first day of shooting, we shot Paul Dano getting captured. That was his very first day of shooting. And then the next 3 days, which were Benizio's first 3 days, was him getting captured and killed.
Wow.
And then the fifth day of shooting was Patricia and Eric shooting at the Chinese restaurant where she has an anxiety attack in the real Chinese restaurant where that happened. And that was her first day of shooting. So the actors really had this level of difficulty that, nobody would be aware of. And they had to jump in and really kind of reverse engineer their performances, because Benizio's character really goes through such a change when he gets out into the world. So that was more challenging, I think, for the actors than anybody else.
Well, now let's contrast the world that Jean-Marc and Ben have directed their movies in, and go to Jesus Christ Superstar Live. It is a different model for David and for Alex. It's if you think about it, your whole effort is a lot of pre-production, and you do the show in one take. I mean, it's like
opening night, closing night.
The production period is 2 hours long, and there's no post. Basically, it's already all been done. Yeah. So finding locations for you, I would assume in this situation is largely a matter of the Garden of Gethsemane, the streets of Jerusalem. That's largely a matter of working with a production designer. To figure that out, how that's going to be staged, because it's all on one massive stage at an armory in Brooklyn. Now, did you guys start the planning of the sets and the choreography. Were you joined at the hip immediately? You kind of suggested you were. How do you negotiate that one long prep period? How do you work?
Pretty early on, we started talking visual references and creative references, and you reached out to Jason, our production designer, and then started developing creative there. I mean, what we knew is from an NBC point of view, it needed to be a rock concert, and that that kind of visceral energy in the room of the audience was very much part of the production design and needed to be, and the cast needed to be supported by an environment whereby you felt that energy in the space. And it was a real struggle to find space on the East Coast around Manhattan that we could pull that off in, because somewhere where there's 2,000 seats. There aren't that many options.
No, there aren't, and it is a huge space. And I think the other thing that we were onto very early was that we really were conceiving of this in terms of an installation as opposed to a series of locations that we would go to on a sound stage. If you see what I mean? Interesting. When I first went into the Armory just to have a look at it and see what it was. They were shooting The Irishman, Martin Scorsese's film, and it was, this vast space with all these different locations on it. There was a diner and there was 5 yellow New York taxi cabs stuck in a corner of the thing. It was thrilling. And it was a movie. But what we were talking about, precisely because it had to be a rock concert, and also because, I felt very strongly that, the nature of Jesus Christ Superstar is it's a one-shot thing. It's not about. I mean, I know there's been a very beautiful movie of it made where you do naturally, because it's a movie, you're going to different locations. But in this case, we knew that it needed to be one landscape, but we had to get that landscape right. And as Alex says, the fact that it was a rock concert gave us all kinds of interesting issues, because the further we pushed it, the more we realized, no, we were still being too safe with where that audience is in relationship to the stage, and bit by bit by bit.
And I think crucially for us, we talked very, very early on about the experience for the viewers at home, not wanting it to be proscenium, wanting to be more than that. Incredibly important for me when we do these live events, that you place the viewers in the heart of the action, and it doesn't feel like a proscenium, two-dimensional, slightly more reserved PBS kind of presentation, but it's a very intimate storytelling format whereby you're trying to create energy within the environment and trying to show the relationship between in situ audience and cast, and ideally for the viewers at home, because you're leaning into this word live as part of your title, you're really trying to tell that story and tell it from the perspective not only of the cast interacting with each other and their characters, but also from the audience that are in that venue. And so you're always trying to get that right balance between closing a scene down and having intimacy and showing that storyline, but also at the right time opening it up and sharing in that energy of the moment and the reaction. And I think that leads very much in terms of the placement of
totally. That's really true. I mean, the fundamental thing to me, well, just in terms of staging and the rhythm of the space, was the thing about Superstar, concept album or not, is that the way they wrote it was that they would just layer on. They would drop a character in musically, and then drop the character out because another character came in musically, because the thing was conceived musically. And so when it actually came to trying to manage sort of big, if you like, the kind of the epic social world of the thing, and then have it suddenly contract to 2 people or 1, it's doing that all the time. It's like a sort of beating heart. And so one of the technical problems we had was that it's not like, we had to create one continuous 2 hours. And by the way, what you just said about it is the strangest process, because the way you build from our conversations, we began, I was in Tokyo, Alex was in LA, Jason, the production designer, was in New York. We were on Skype. It was like 5 a.m. in Tokyo where I was, and we'd have this conversation about the Sistine Chapel, and then I go and do something in Japanese. And it's sort of this thing built over months, and gradually, and then we end up, and you have the night, and it's over. And I remember saying to somebody, well, I mean, we are closing on the night that we're open. And I've done quite a lot on Broadway, and so I'm familiar with with the phenomenon. I just didn't think it was going to happen to me. But it is very odd because it just reaches it. But the whole thing, everybody's rhythm and it is really interesting because everybody becomes focused to that 2 hours.
Well, one thing that remains true is we all have a limited amount of time to do our thing. So you're putting this thing together. The whole ball of wax for you is the preparation, is what we would normally call the pre-production time. I'm curious, there is a choreography that needs to take place among the cast, blocking, but it has to work in concert with a choreography with the camera coverage as well. And for those of you who may not have seen Jesus Christ Superstar, it was a virtual ballet of camera movement, and it was just brilliant in the way it was both staged and captured. But is there ever a conflict?
I was in reference to that, watching that clip. And I watched it live. It was so good. It was I never saw one camera in that clip. That was
exactly.
I mean, and that was all live.
Exactly.
So there were cameras that were getting out of the way of other cameras, and you never saw one. That's incredible.
And then that's the challenge for me. And when I storyboard and work on a scene with not only David, but with a choreographer, if it's a big dance sequence, is designing not only primary coverage, but then designing how, as directors, we tell a visual story that's interesting, but doesn't just end up being, again, come back to this word proscenium and play safe. You want to embed yourselves in the action. You want to get right into the heart of emotion and character development and interaction. Mm-hmm. And so I had approximately 14 cameras on the show, approximately 1,700 shots. Everyone has to be, each one of those shots needs to be executed pristinely and accurately. The real challenging shots are the Steadicam shots. We had 2 Steadicams and the dynamic shots, and a spider cam across the length of the venue. So when you choreograph for those shots, we script and call back shots in tempo musically. So the actors blocking and song and dance is in harmony with us calling back the shots musically. So there's in terms of executing each shot, it's happening at a preconceived and agreed point, like a musical score, like an operatic score. And that allows us that precision to replicate and to be incredibly precise about nuance, about angle, about composition, size of frame, and dynamic of shot. So if a Steadicam's coming into the middle of the environment, we know, I say it has 3 bars and 7 beats to do a 360-degree move around the actor. And then I give it a secondary cue, a keyframe to pull back, and he has 7 beats to pull back before I take the next close-up, just so that they clear frame. And that choreography that you talk about, that's the hardest bit of the equation for me as a director, because I'm trying to create this kind of visual language all the way through that is sensitive to the primary narrative, but also is a great entertaining experience for the viewers. I
want to know where you get the camera operators. I mean, New England Patriots. Where do you recruit these guys?
Feed them a lot of fizzy drinks. No, they are definitely some of the best in the business.
That's fantastic. We only have a few minutes left, and I just wanted to briefly touch on the production process. I want to slip back to Ben, if we could, the sequences in The Escape, because this is just, as a director, I was knocked out, and maybe others were too, with the way that you made engrossing, captivating, nail-biting the escape through that ridiculous 2.5-foot pipe.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that, because I saw what I think was snorkel cam. I mean, how did you get inside that pipe?
Right.
How did you do that, man?
It was an 18-inch pipe, actually. Yeah. I mean, the hardest thing was getting, I think, the actors to feel okay in the pipe. You know, they didn't. And Paul had to spend a lot of time in the pipe. We never used a snorkel cam. We just had a section of pipe that we then had a camera on a little kind of on some wheels on like a little sort of like dolly that would be inside the pipe. So we just would pull it in front of Paul and go back and forth with him, and then we cut a channel in one section of pipe that was about 4 inches wide, so that we could stick the lens of the camera there for side angle shots to go along with him. But Paul had to just go deep into that pipe and do all those scenes, and that was, I think, the most challenging thing. And then Benicio didn't love the pipe, and I don't blame him. We tried to do that stuff as quickly as possible. But all of that, the goal for me was to try to feel the claustrophobia of that experience, because it was just so...
It worked.
I mean, it was just such a nightmare to think this guy was going into a pipe where he couldn't get out in the middle of the night in a prison where nobody knew he was, and he had to figure out how to cut his way in and out of that pipe. And did that for 3 months, going down there cutting by hand. So that, to me, that was so fascinating how that actually happened, that I just wanted to try to really get the feeling of what it was like to be in there with him.
Yeah. We'll telescope really to the end, because this has been fascinating. I wouldn't have changed a thing. A quick question for Jean-Marc. The extraordinary use of what traditionally is called flashbacks, in which you were able to get inside the head of Camille. You did it in the most intriguing way, often with silence. There was nothing of the stinger that you so often see in films. It was very nonlinear. It was very inside the central character's head. Was that largely created in post, or did you have it in mind all along?
It was created by Marty Noxon in episode 1, and then the other writers followed up. They were on the page, and then we became creative on the set and added some. And same thing in post, where we got some ideas in the cutting room. Where why don't we push that impression that where this story is told from Camille, and why don't we go in her head, and why don't we use this device to do what the book was doing with words. She has an obsession with words. She used them to heal and to harm, and we didn't have any voiceover. And at the beginning, I was challenging. I was a little bit thrown away when I read the first episode from Marty and Gillian. And what do you mean there's no voiceover? This is the quality number 1 of the book. Her internal monologue is so powerful. The way this woman sees life, her environment, her family, her past, and it's amazing. So we started to realize on the set that, we're going to use this and create. She's going to be the only one who sees words in her reality. And when we'll cut to different perspective from someone else, the words won't be there. So when she feels a word burning on herself, she'll see it. And then when we cut to an objective point of view, which isn't her point of view, the word isn't there. And we started to do that in flashbacks too, where she, in her head, she's thinking about a specific word, and then whoops, it appears in her reality, even in her past, without using the sound of the past, keeping the sound of the present time. So it helps, and it's funny because it's a grammar, it's a vocabulary that I started to use, that we started to use with some editors back then, a few films ago. With Café de Flore, a film that was done in 2011, and then we pushed it more in Wild and Demolition, and even in BLL, and I'm repeating myself, from one film to the other, and there you go. And but it's funny how a language is evolving and how it serves stories, even though they're very different, but it becomes. I love to tell stories and try to go into their mind and to communicate this to the audience so they feel what they feel, what the main characters are seeing or hearing or thinking or dreaming or fantasizing, and we play with reality, linear or not, and it's a great toy.
Well, I want to thank these four extraordinary directors for sharing their artistry with us tonight. Thank you very much for being here. Three terrific films, along with Maniac and Paterno. But it's wonderful of you to share time with us. We are. It's a marvelous art form. There is not a genre out there that takes that is. I think television, limited series, long form is doing as good a work as any screen anywhere on the planet. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with us. Join us for a drink, and we'll be there.
Thanks to you, Mr. Mike.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this exclusive discussion. You can watch the full video of the Movies for Television and Limited Series Symposium and of our other Meet the Nominees events on our website at dga.org/events. Past episodes of The Director's Cut are available wherever you listen to podcasts, and be sure to click subscribe so you won't miss an episode. If you're enjoying the podcast, please like, share, and leave us a review. We'd love to hear your feedback. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America. Music is by Dan Vallee.